Hello, everyone. I'm Shakiba Shayani, CEO at the Guelph Chamber of Commerce. I'm pleased to be joined by Indira Naidoo-Harris, Assistant Vice President of Diversity and Human Rights at the University of Guelph, for an ongoing conversation on equity, diversity, and inclusion, and what the University of Guelph is doing to create meaningful and positive change in our community. So thank you, Indira, for joining us today and for having this conversation. We've been having some really thoughtful conversations about equity, diversity, and inclusion, and it's nice to have an expert on the call with us to help us continue that. So thank you.
Really great to be here, Shakiba. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's start out and ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your current role.
Well, I've had an interesting career and an interesting life, Shakiba, and I think it's important in some ways for the chamber, in Guelph to have a sense of this, because I think we've all realized over the years that we don't necessarily take one path. We talk at the U of G to students about the notion of developing the idea of having multiple career paths. It makes you more flexible as an employee, and employers are able to work with folks like that a lot more because you bring various skills to the table. So I'm like a perfect example of someone who's done that. I studied political science at the university and thought that was the route I was going to go, but instead chose journalism along the way and broadcast journalism. So I've had three careers essentially, and the first one was as a broadcast journalist. So working for some networks both in the States and in Canada. So some brief time at NBC and PBS, but more of my time at CBC and Omni and CTV News and working in the national newsroom. And the reason I bring this up is because you'll see a similar thread. I did that because I wanted to really try to help people who are facing challenges in their lives. And I would point out to community leaders and politicians, this person's having this problem and you need to fix that. And so what are you doing to help them? And so that thread continued through my life. And I moved from asking people what they were doing to starting to feel like all I was doing was being a critic, and maybe there was something I could do to help solve people's problems. And so started thinking about politics and thinking about helping folks in a real way, not just saying, what are you doing, but maybe what am I doing? So was elected as an MPP in Halton, was there for 4 years, wound up in cabinet. And it really opened my eyes, not just to the problems people face, but how you really build solutions, and some of that is developing strategies and framework and doing the homework you need to solve problems and build the pathways from this challenge to where you want to get to. And so my ministries were, first one was Associate Minister of Finance. So I think your folks would be interested in that. And then I went on to Minister for Early Years and Childcare. And then that was Ontario's first with that role. Then went on to a Minister of the Status of Women, which is about gender equity. And so very much fits in with the work I'm doing now. And then finally moved on to the Minister of Education, which was a very natural move at the time. And I held that in the childcare one. I tell you this backstory first because this is how I arrived at being, at the U of G as the Associate VP of Diversity and Human Rights, which is really a role about creating equity and creating inclusive spaces where people are accepted and are able to reach their full potential and soar. And in this instance, it's looking at this piece in terms of students, so young people, staff, the workplace, and faculty, our academics who are really working to give our young people the knowledge and skills they need to be able to function well in the workforce, which is what your folks deal with. So all of these pieces along the way have fit in very well, because the bottom line is it's been about trying to help build supports for people facing challenges in their lives. And ultimately, in the end, that comes down to doing that equitably. It's not about fairness for this person, but not you. It's about building those supports and foundations so everyone can really soar and be successful. And that's so important, I think, in the business world and in the workplace is building that equity and fairness into things. And so that's what I'm doing at the U of G is working on building those pathways so that students can really get down to learning, as opposed to worrying about whether or not somebody hears their voice or cares about what they have to say. All voices count. What everyone says is part of who we are as a human family, and we can't grow together and soar if we leave people out. It's just we won't be competitive in the business world. We won't be competitive as a country, and we won't really be successful as human beings if we neglect that very valuable piece about how we get along with each other.
Oh, thank you for sharing all of that. And you're right, it is the makeup and the culmination of all of your experiences and contributions that makes Guelph and campus really lucky to have you in this role. And it's quite a significant one. Actually, I believe it was early in your tenure that you addressed the chamber membership, and now we're coming up to 2 years since your start on campus. Can you tell me a little bit about the department's vision now that it's been settled a little bit more for you, and how you hope your efforts then trickle into the community to create change?
Well, when I came on board, I was really trying to ensure that we were building a culture of inclusion at the University of Guelph, and it was so important. In the past, to some extent, that was part of the role as Associate Vice President of Diversity and Human Rights at the university. But a lot of the role was also focused on complaints. So, being that office that guided people through what their human rights were, what proper ways of conducting themselves were in the classroom or the workplace, and so on. And when I came along, I really thought, by the time we get to the complaints piece, we failed in many ways, right? You need to build a culture where people understand how they should be treating each other and understand the value of all of those diverse voices and ways of looking at things, because after all, that's what a university is. We come up with innovative ideas, and you can't come up with innovative, groundbreaking paths to technology or new ways of doing and thinking about the world without allowing everybody to be able to contribute. You just can't. And so basically my focus has been that. And then COVID hit. And then the Black Lives Matter movement happened, and so many things that really forced us to examine who we are as human beings as we're going through this tremendous time of challenges and stress, and how we can really not just cope with these difficult challenges and problems, but how can we build a better world moving forward? Because as your membership knows, rebuilding from a financial standpoint is going to be huge. Our economy is going to not just have to survive the hits we took in terms of where the spending had to go to deal with people not being able to work and building those supports there. But we also have to make sure that our people are going to be ready to take on the challenges of the future. And all the other countries out there in the world are facing the same kind of issues and challenges. And so how can we make sure that folks from Guelph, Ontario, and Canada are up to the job? And that absolutely depends on making sure that we build an inclusive culture at the U of G and also in our workplaces. And so my job right now is creating a place where everyone feels they belong, where everyone accepts each other, has a respect for each other, and treats each other with value. And while I think many of us do that in our daily work, it's really about digging a little deeper and saying, okay, what's in our curriculum? Have we really, reported history the way we should be? Are we talking about the things that we should be talking about when we look at history? So looking at the curriculum piece and other, I'm talking about history as an example, but all courses. Then how do we create inclusive places and spaces, in the classroom, count everyone in, recognize that the 4 equity seeking groups are, women, it's Indigenous, it's those with disabilities, and it's persons of color, but it's also about LGBTQ2IA plus, and so many other things that we need to think about when we are in the classroom or on campus about how we include everyone in the conversation. And so it's first of all building those strong, powerful voices that say, this is who we are at the U of G. We are kind, helpful, supportive people who are in this together and are going to help each other out get to the next level. We are going to include everybody and recognize that even though you may speak slightly differently or wear different clothing, you have value and I can learn from you just like you can learn from me. So it's a two-way street. Look at what our biases are. We all have them. None of us are immune to it. We just build them over time, and we need to keep examining that when we're looking at, when you walk into a room, how do you size up the room and what do you think when you walk into a classroom? So those pieces are incredibly important, and ultimately in the end, really building a culture at the U of G where everyone has a strong sense of belonging and really can walk away from their experience here being better human beings and being better able to be successful in the workforce, not just in our community, but broadly in a global world, which we do have to be able to fit into.
It's interesting that you speak of the curriculum and intervention there as a means to create the change that you're looking for. Are there other offerings or tactical programming or services that you're providing?
So we're doing a number of things. So if I'm going to sort of tackle what's happened post COVID and during COVID, I should say, and the Black Lives Matter movement, because there were many calls from across the country and around the world to address, for example, systemic racism and the barriers that folks face that not everyone is aware and really intended to put up as barriers. So examining those pieces. So one of the things we did was we came up with a 14-point action plan at the U of G. How can we really systematically look at building anti-racism supports and break down those barriers and challenges that folks from our various equity-seeking groups are facing, but just folks in general. And so what we did, I'll give you the highlights of some of those. So we set out to develop a module. And we did. It's a 2-part module, about 45 minutes each. And what we did was made that module available to all faculty, students, and staff at the U of G, but we made it a mandatory module that first-year undergraduate students entering the U of G should take and have to take in order to fully participate in everything at the U of G. So that right away says, here's our values and here what we stand for. We set up a president's anti-racism advisory committee so that from the top level of senior leadership at the university, folks are looking and listening to people on campus about racism and looking at how we build stronger policies and procedures, how we deal with systemic barriers and so on. Data. We can't fix the gaps if we don't know where they are. And I'm sure that's something that even translates into some of the organizations that are members with you. You need to know who your people are. You need to know what their backgrounds are. And you need to also look at how they're moving up through your organization. And if you have real great diversity on one level, but at the senior levels, you don't have it, you're actually missing out. It's not just a matter of fairness. You're missing out on those voices that can give you insight into and true value based on their sort of different experiences in other contexts that can really help out and build a stronger organization. The other one that we did was we put out a UNIV 2010, a course on anti-oppression and anti-discrimination. We have now trained all of our senior leadership and board of governors and council of chairs and deans, and that training is going throughout our campus. We've now trained folks, thousands of folks, and more actually than we have in the past, and thousands have taken that module. The data collection is there, I told you about, but also the EDI, we've set up an EDI fund, which is a $200,000 fund to really support initiatives across the university. We've supported 20 new ones. We've taken stock of all the EDI initiatives on campus. We know we have 145 EDI initiatives underway last time we counted, but that's growing. In addition to about 20 other committees that we have, and then we committed to building supports for undergraduate and graduate students. So undergrad students right now, we have about 26 awards and scholarships and so on for undergraduate students, and about several others for graduate students. So this is a snapshot of what we're doing. I'm sure I've forgotten some very key things, but gives you a sense of how we're attacking it on many different levels, and how we're working really hard to ensure that everyone has a good experience at the U of G and feels like they can sit in a classroom or in a workplace and contribute, in a way that really helps them reach their full potential and feel accepted along the way.
That's excellent. It's quite comprehensive, and it's great to know that there's a plan and a strategy, in front of the work and the effort you're putting in. I'm curious, can the community at large, the business community and others, leverage any of the resources and the learnings that you have?
Absolutely. So, as far as I'm concerned, universities are really a reflection of what's going on in the broader society. And we're also tasked with the notion of being leaders in many ways, because after all, the students that come through our system are our future leaders. So what happens in a university community is a key, it's almost like test of what can happen elsewhere and what is happening elsewhere. We're not in a silo, and so I can't build inclusion at the U of G and then have folks go out into our broader community and feel that they're not a part of that community. So so much of what we do can be accessed. So absolutely, the modules I mentioned are now available for folks, for community organizations, for business folks and so on, to be able to access them. We've created a pathway to do that. And so, people can come, apply and come to us and say they'd like to use those modules in their teachings and with their staff and their folks in their workforce, and happy to do that. And that's very much available. I think there's a nominal fee for it, but it's really very well received, and has been received in many ways, not just in Guelph, but across the country. We've had responses to it, and so that's the good news about that. We're a resource, always a resource. Universities are public organizations, and so we're there to serve not just our community, but all of you. And so anytime anybody has any questions or guidance they're looking for, please pick up the phone and ask us. And then finally, I would say that this is about partnerships, and so I am very open to building partnerships and working with folks in the business community like yourself or individual organizations. And I would encourage people to think about that. We have the ability to do research. We have the ability to make modules accessible, resources, readings, and all of that. But we can also partner with you in various ways to build more inclusive workspaces. And the bottom line is inclusive workspaces actually mean, better returns for an employer. And those studies are there and have been there for many years, done by folks like Deloitte and everyone else, that, the data and the research is there that says inclusion really builds a more successful workforce and workplaces. So we're happy to work with you, whether it's through our modules, through our research, through our resources that we're open to providing and speaking with all of you about.
Well, that seems like the perfect place to wrap this up on. Thank you so much for making yourself available, your team. The work you're doing is important, and it is such a good reminder to know that we can lean on the expertise and capacity that exists right here in our community in Guelph. We're very grateful and lucky to have the institution available to us. Any parting words?
I just want to encourage your membership to reach out to us anytime they have an idea or something that they're thinking about doing. Happy to hear it and happy to assist in whatever way we can. We are a resource, not just for our university community, but all of you. And I think the important partnerships that we build through your organization and your membership is going to be so important in terms of the future workforce and how we can work together and build a better society for all of us.
Absolutely. You can certainly count on the Chamber as a partner and our network. And we look forward to the continued dialogue and work that we'll put in on this important work. So we will be linking to all of the resources you've mentioned below in the video, and I look forward to talking to you soon, Indira. Thank you.
Thank you.